Welcome back to the channel. In today's video we are going to be flying out the Mirage 2000-5F. Now this isn't a new plane, but it did get a slightly new flight model, and it also gets the new MICA-EM Fox 3 active radar homing missile, whatever you want to call it. Just real quick, when it comes to the flight performance on this thing, what they've basically done is at high speeds it compresses a whole lot more now, but in turn you also retain a lot more energy, especially at like medium speeds and stuff. So basically, you're not going to dump all of your speed in a single turn like it kind of used to be in this thing now. Now, it can still do funny delta wing things, don't worry about that, but it's just the flight model as a whole is a little bit more conservative now than it used to be. Now, as always on this channel, when we talk about this plane, we are going to be talking about it from the perspective of the simulator game mode. And we're going to start off by talking about the new MICA-EM missile. Now, this is, I think the best way to think about this missile is that it is essentially a let's call it a dogfighting missile, but it's active radar homing, right? So what I'm trying to say by this is, like, you're not really going to win any like long-range BVR fights in this, especially not against something like the AMRAAM. When it comes to stuff like, you know, going up against stuff like the R-77 or the Darter missile or whatever, it actually does hold up fairly well. This is also why your experience with this plane in general is going to be very, very different depending on what side you're on. So if you're playing with the Americans on the blue side, you're going to have a vastly better experience, I dare say, than if you're going to be playing against the Americans with the Russians on the red side. The sim game mode obviously doesn't like to mix up teams very much, especially like in RB or something. It just doesn't really make sense for the game mode. So a lot of the time, especially at top tier, you end up getting this like kind of discount NATO versus Warsaw Pacts sort of lineup where there's a couple of nations like France, Sweden and Japan, and sometimes even Italy, that can kind of hop on either side. And with how powerful the AMRAAM is, especially in combination with something like an F-16 or an F-15 right now, this is why I say, like, depending on what side you're on, your experience in this plane is going to differ significantly. And to get the footage for this video, you can clearly see that I chose easy mode. Back to the MICA-EM though, is the thing with this missile is that it's not actually a bad missile by any means. The booster engine on it is actually quite strong. It even gets up to a pretty decent speed. The problem is, though, is that because it's such a tiny missile, it's also, because of that, quite lightweight, and once all the fuel runs out in the missile, hence it's not being propelled anymore, a drag kind of takes over, and it just doesn't, it can't glide for very long, especially not compared to some of the heavier missiles like the AMRAAM or the R-27 or something like that. However, the upside to the MICA is that not only is it an incredibly maneuverable missile, but it also has thrust vectoring, and thrust vectoring, as we know, it's, you know, you have it on the R-73s. Thrust vectoring is a little bit weird in War Thunder, just because I think the game code can't quite handle it just yet. However, it does seem to work very well for the MICAs, and you can use these in close-range dogfights as well, which I also have a couple of clips showcasing this a little bit later in the video. So, your objective in the Mirage is to constantly force close-range fights. Now, this is a good example, I think, of how you need to sort of play the Mirage, and I know this is against a flanker, and I think he ended up firing an ER at me instead of an R-77, because you can see on the RB he's actually locking me. Like straight up, it's not a TWS lock or anything like that. I also get the missile notification straight away. So I fired a MICA off at him in a TWS. I start cranking straight away because I wasn't sure if the MICA was going to reach him before his ER basically reaches me. But I turn off. I duck into the mountain range here just to sort of break line of sight. Now he's essentially going to lose visual at this point, and we end up getting into this like little peekaboo game. And the Mirage, I think, is very, very good at playing this sort of game. When you have maps that have a lot of terrain, like Afghanistan or something, and you do go into the mountains for cover, break that visual, then it can get kind of... It's essentially who finds the other person first again, right? And you can see here, I ducked below him. He's probably not going to scan into this like little crevice here. He just keeps flying in a straight line. I lock him up on the ACM mode straight away just to get a quick lock, and I fired a mic at him straight away. Now, he didn't see me probably because his radar wasn't scanning like in this particular section of the mountain, but that's kind of the advantage that you have, right? So when you both go into the mountain and you try and find each other and you play this like little game of peekaboo, then it is essentially just who finds the other person first, and at that point it doesn't really matter what aircraft you're in or if you have disadvantages or whatever, because it's like a 50-50 who sees the other person first, right? It's, you know, providing you both have the same RWR, which I think in this case we didn't, because he's in the old flanker, but you get what I'm trying to say. And of course, us being in a Mirage, we kind of prefer the close range fight anyway against, you know, whether it be a flanker or an F-16 or an F-15 or whatever. So this is always a very, very good tactic to sort of try and do, and to keep you alive, essentially. It just sort of evens the odds, right? Pull them into your domain, don't fight their fight, force them to fight your fight, kind of thing, right? Now, something that's become very important ever since the last patch is the update rate of your radar, and in other words, how fast does your radar scan, because this also determines how fast your radar is going to pick a target up that's like in front of you, right? There's a lot of times in the game where you know that there's an enemy like over in that direction there, and you need to get a missile off in order to defeat them essentially. The problem is with these missiles is because we can't mad dog them yet, we can't just fire them off without radar lock. Your radar needs to acquire them first, and depending how quickly your radar can do this can actually mean life or death in a lot of situations, and you're going to see this in this clip here. Now, first up, I see this enemy. He's about, I don't know, what is that, 20 miles in front of me. I fired a micro off because I know he's going to have to, he's going to fire a missile back, so I need to give him something to think about, which he obviously does. You can see on the RWR there. I go defensive real quick, just to avoid his missile, obviously. And I start scanning in this direction. I see another dude here, like, relatively close, so I need to also give him something to think about, just so they don't both rush me at the same time. Now look, I know this guy's in this, like, little canyon here. I point the radar there. The radar picks him up super fast, which allows me to get the micro off really quickly as well. And then I go defensive, and you can see he also fired a missile back at me. You can see it's on the way there. No RWR warning, by the way. And when he blows up, the missile also blows up. So I want you to think, if I was in a Russian jet there, for instance, because the radar on the flanker, by the way, takes ages. It takes like 8 or 10 seconds, I think, to complete a full scan. I would not have gotten that kill if this was in the flanker. This is something we're going to talk about a little bit more in the flanker video whenever that comes out. But yeah, same sort of similar story here as well. The dude that I fired at earlier, close to distance, I just need to get a missile off on him like real quick. And radar picks him up like pretty much instantly. I get the micro off and defeat his missile like pretty easily there. Like I said, I will talk about these radar refresh rates a little bit more in the flanker video, just because it affects that plane way more than it does any of the Western style jets. I just need you to understand that this is something that the Mirage does very, very well. And this is one of the advantages that the plane actually has, especially if you're going up against the Russian team. Now in this next clip here, I was trying to get this dude in the cap point. Now he was deep inside the mountains. I was at high altitude, obviously. He'd already dodged one of my MICAs. And he was being a bit of a tricky guy to actually shoot down. Now I decided, okay, it's probably best if I just stay high here, because it means that if he wants to, shoot back at me, he's going to have to point his nose up, and then my MICA would get him. So I was just following him, waiting for him to sort of turn around, and he starts turning around now. I believe at this point I started to fire. Yep, I fired off the MICA. I turned the radar off just so it doesn't start tracking anything, like any kind of chaff or whatever. Now, I see a teammate killed an enemy down there, and I see some wreckage. So now I assume that this was him, that the guy I was tracking just ended up getting shot down. But then I see on the kill feed that the teammate that just shot that guy down got shot down himself. So now I'm assuming that this is the person that's actually still down there. So now I know that there's still a jet down there, and I have absolutely no clue who he is, because I'm a doofus and I've lost the visual. I'm quite fast though, so I decided to just power through and just kind of look behind me. As you can see on the RW bar, he shows up there. And I'm not sure quite how close he is there, but he's fairly close, I would say. So I duck behind the mountain, put the air brake on, throttle down to 0, try and dump a little bit at that speed just to sort of turn around now, because now I have the mountain to turn around to use as cover. I want to pop back up the other side. I'm keeping an eye out on that ridge line behind me, just in case he sort of does pop up and try and follow me around. I don't see anything. I play around with a few different radar settings just to see if I can like pick him up there. And I should have probably, looking back at the footage now, I should have kept turning here, because it is pretty obvious that he would have just kept going around the mountain. I'm not sure why, like what I was thinking at this point, but I just end up flying in a straight line. But this is kind of like, I think I end up seeing him back here as well. But this is going to end up showing you why I think the Mirage is so good at this, playing this like little peekaboo game, right? Now I see him over there. I'm not sure he saw me actually. I try and sort of play around with the I wanted to kill him with a mic here, so I try and play around with like the radar gun sight thing there, with the radar mounted HMD. And by the time I clicked all the buttons, I actually lost visual on him again. So yeah. I decided to just, okay, gain some speed, get a little bit distance from the situation now. Maybe I could pick him up there. And now, all of a sudden, I had no clue where he was, and I have a missile notification from behind me. Now, I didn't get a radar notification, that was just a missile notification, meaning that he fired an infrared guided missile, or a Fox 2, at me. And this is something that no other top tier jet, as far as I know, actually tells you. I had no clue where he was, but the second he fired a missile, he revealed his position because the Moore system on the Mirage actually told me. So this is like, I'm not sure how if people sort of grasp how much of an advantage this is. Like you simply cannot stealth kill the Mirage now. And then I get him with the helmet mounted sight. Fired a micro off at him and just you know, I wanted to keep this clip in there just as well to sort of showcase what the micros are like in a dogfight, because this thing is actually pretty damn good. Obviously with the thrust vectoring stuff, you can use it in place of a magic for these close range shots. Obviously you need to fiddle around a little bit with the radar. And it takes a little bit more time to get it off than a normal Fox 2, but yeah, you can. It's definitely potent in a dogfight. I would say in general right now, if I'm within 5 miles of my opponent, there's no other aircraft I'd really rather be sitting in than the Mirage. Another clip here of the MAW just being absolutely goated here. You see I'm getting a missile notification there with the radar lock as well, but I also have this like little missile this little missile symbol telling me that I should be flaring as well, because there's an IR missile going off and you can hear it just sort of pass me in the background there. Obviously at these kind of ranges you should always be chaffing and flaring at the same time, because you never know, but there's a lot that happens in this game and sometimes you do just forget these things, so it's nice to have that little bit of a reminder. Now next clip here, I am essentially going to showcase this dude's insane skills at dodging radar missiles. I mean, you can see him at about 26,000 feet here, which I think is around, I don't know, 8,000 meters or something. I'm doing Mach 1, almost doing Mach 1.5. There's not a lot, he's not going to kinematically defeat a missile at this point. But he goes there, he does his notching, he does his multi-pathing or whatever. He deploys his chaff and actually ends up see, I thought this missile here was a pretty sure kill, which is why I pointed the nose up, but he ends up chaffing it, points his plane in the correct orientation, and does a really good job. It's unfortunate that I also have magics, and obviously the magic at this kind of range, you're not going to flare that off, but you know, good effort, definitely. No, but seriously, this dude was actually pretty good in the game, and my only 2 deaths, which you'll see at the end on the scoreboard, are actually to him in this game as well. Now, I have an IR missile coming at me in my 12 o'clock, so I end up flaring it. I merge with this flanker here. I realise I am way too fast for a merge here, so I just end up sort of just blasting through and trying to reposition. He does end up turning into me. At this point, I mean, don't get me wrong, I really want to fight this dude, but I'm just trying to sort of get a little bit of distance to allow me to sort of turn around. Now, I'm checking 6 there just to sort of, you know, see if he's still back there and if he's following me. He is indeed following me, so I use my speed. I try and sort of find some terrain somewhere so I can break line of sight and actually end up turning around. Now he does end up radar locking me, and I think so he's fired an ER at me, which I assume it's an ER. Ends up firing a IR guided missile as well, but I managed to duck behind the mountain before I need to sort of, you know, use any countermeasures. Now here's my chance. I've broken the line of sight, which means I can then pull the air brake, pull the throttle back, and just sort of get this plane turned around and hopefully get into an offensive position. Now I don't think he realised I pulled left around the mountain here, because he just ends up going straight. I lock him up on the radar here. I get the micro off and just look at this missile go, man. Look at that, like he's pulling into it as well, and the Mica just does not care, and it just ends up tracking him through all of the flares. I assume he dumps some chaff as well, and the Mica just ends up eating him. And honestly, this is why earlier I said there's no plane I'd rather be in within 5 miles of an opponent than the Mirage, and the Mica's a big reason on why that is, and hopefully this clip did kind of showcase that a little bit. But yeah, that was the match, and pretty much final score was 16-2, or 18 if you count the 2 crits that I got. Both of my deaths were down to the top player on the enemy team there, like I said earlier, and rewards were kind of, I mean, you be the judge of it. So, like I said in the beginning of the video, your experience playing the Mirage really is going to depend on if you're playing on the blue side or the red side. Now, playing it on the blue side is a lot easier than playing it on the red side, because the Mica is kind of a short-range missile anyway, because of its because it's lightweight and stuff like that. And just going up against an AMRAAM, like, it's a difference if you're going up against an AMRAAM or if you're going up against something like an R77, right? I mean, the range is actually kind of similar, or the performance on the Mica is kind of similar to that of the R77 anyway, so you can, if you really want to, you can kind of play the high altitude BVR game. You just need to watch out for the ER a little bit. But if you're playing it on the red side against, the American F-15s, the F-16s and stuff, you stand no chance up at high altitude. And I will be showcasing this a little bit, hopefully, in some later videos I plan on making. Back when I'm doing the the live comms with the cinematic shots that you guys seem to enjoy as well. right now I just kind of want to go through a lot of the new stuff while the patch hype is still sort of fresh. But yeah, I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope I could showcase this playing a little bit in the simulated game mode. And yeah, if you're looking for a sim-orientated Discord server, as always, guys, you're free to join mine. It's linked in the description, as well as control setups and stuff you'll find down there. I've also got a control setup video on my channel somewhere. And yeah, guys, thank you very much for watching, and hopefully I will see you in the next video. Cheers.